This is a powerful and gripping narrative. Below is the full English translation of the story of Eleanor Vance. They thought age had erased my mind. My 4 children took me from my home, stole my savings, and locked me in an asylum to divide my inheritance while I was still alive. But in the attic of that house, there was a secret none of them expected. I am Eleanor Vance, and I'm going to tell you how I turned abandonment into the greatest lesson my children ever received. What they thought would be my end was only the beginning of their downfall. Sit with me for a moment. Not to save me, not to feel pity, just to listen to the truth that no one wanted to hear when there was still time. I am a mother. I was a mother every day of my adult life, before the sun rose, after the house slept, when there was no money, when there was no rest. My 4 children grew up under this roof here in Scarsdale, fed by hands that never learned to ask for anything in return. I believed that would be enough. I believed the love I sewed into their clothes and stirred into warm soup during harsh New York winters would be my insurance for old age. How foolish of me, right? You, listening to me now, might think your children are different. I thought so too. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 72 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my life was the portrait of the American dream. 4 successful children: Thomas, the lawyer; Sarah, the real estate agent; David and little Julie. My late husband Robert and I worked double shifts at our small grocery store so they could have what we never had. But as I aged, it wasn't my body that began to fail first. It was the silence. Sunday calls grew shorter. Holiday visits, once full of laughter, became rare and rushed. I began to become a piece of old furniture in the living room, someone they loved, but who no longer fit into the busy schedules of their perfect lives. Until one day, without a fight, without shouting, without a goodbye, they decided I was no longer part of their future. My house was gone. My security was gone. And bit by bit, my name was too. My own children left me with nothing. They came with papers, fake smiles and soft words about what was best for me. Thomas used his lawyer's silver tongue to convince me I was confused. Sarah, with the cold eyes of someone appraising a property for demolition, already had the right buyer for the house where I took my first steps as a wife. They stripped me of every memory, every porcelain plate, every family photo, as if they were cleaning out a closet of useless things. They thought I would die in peace, that I would accept the fate of a gray room in some nursing home, staring at the wall while waiting for the end. They thought I would stay quiet, like so many mothers before me, who accept the crumbs of abandonment so as not to bother their children. But what they never understood is that a mother doesn't stop being a mother when she grows old. She just stops being convenient. And a mother betrayed by her own fruit carries a strength that none of those law manuals or real estate guides can explain. Can you imagine the pain of seeing those you carried in your womb looking at you as if you were a financial problem to be solved? The betrayal didn't come from a stranger. It came from Thomas, whom I rocked when he had a fever. It came from Sarah, whom I helped choose a wedding dress. It came from each of them. The first real conflict happened that November afternoon. The sky was gray, promising snow. They gathered in my living room, but they didn't bring flowers or grandchildren. They brought an ultimatum. Mom, the house is too big. The costs are high. We've already signed the transfer documents to the family trust. At that moment, the floor disappeared. The abuse wasn't physical, it was psychological. It was the manipulation of making me believe I no longer had a right to my own sweat. I saw the glint of greed in their eyes. It wasn't concern for me, it was haste for an early inheritance. They wanted the sale money to pay for David's gambling debts, for the new expansion of Thomas's office, for Sarah's luxurious lifestyle. I was the only obstacle between them and a few $1,000,000. And suddenly, I found myself alone in an empty house, listening to the echo of my own memories being packed into cardboard boxes. I didn't die that day, though a part of me wished my heart would stop so I wouldn't feel that agony. I watched, I waited. I saw how they divided my belongings like vultures circling a carcass. They thought because I was 72, my mind was as fragile as my bones. Little did they know I was lucid, more lucid than ever. And now, when I have nothing left to lose, no house, no name, no illusion of their love, I will tell you exactly how everything was taken from me, and why what came after was neither cruelty nor luck. It was consequence. Because, my dears, there are secrets in this family that even the best lawyer in New York cannot bury, and I am about to unearth every single one of them. Stay with me, because the story of how a mother loses everything is sad, but the story of how she rises from the ashes to seek justice, that is the story they never wanted you to know. It all began to change definitively on a Thanksgiving holiday. At that time, I still struggled to keep up appearances. I prepared the turkey, the pumpkin pies, and decorated the table with the same candles I had used for 20 years. I wanted them to feel at home, but the truth was they already acted as if the house were a hotel, or rather, a financial asset. Thomas, in that expensive suit that cost more than I spent on 6 months of groceries, wouldn't put down his phone. Sarah spent the whole time criticizing the paint on the walls and the old smell that, according to her, was impregnated in the curtains. It was between the main course and dessert that the poison was served. Thomas cleared his throat, wiped his lips with a linen napkin, and looked at his siblings. There was a rehearsed silence. "Mom," he began, with that velvety voice he uses to convince jurors, "we've been talking. Dad left this property to you, but the maintenance is draining what's left of his savings. And, let's be honest, you almost fell down the stairs last month." I felt a chill down my spine. Yes, I had tripped, a silly accident, but they turned it into proof of senile dementia. David, who was always the weakest in character, avoided my gaze while attacking the pie. Julie, the youngest whom I had always protected, just nodded. They had a plan. They didn't want to care for me. They wanted to remove me. "We've opened a joint account to manage your assets," Sarah said, placing an envelope on the table. "For your safety, Eleanor, you just need to sign this power of attorney. Thomas will handle the legal part, and I've already found an assisted living community in New Jersey that is a real resort." Assisted living community. A gourmet name for abandonment. I looked at those 4 faces that I myself had shaped. Where had I gone wrong? I taught them to walk, to speak, to have character, or so I thought. I refused to sign that day. I stood up with what little dignity I had left and said that this was my home and I would die in it. But greed does not sleep. In the following months, the psychological abuse became a siege. They began canceling my credit cards, claiming improper use. They stopped paying the gardener, so the house would look abandoned to the neighbors in Scarsdale. Thomas began sending formal letters from his law firm, questioning my mental sanity. They created a narrative that I was a crazy, wasteful old woman destroying the family estate. Isolation was the cruelest weapon. They instructed my grandchildren not to call me, saying Grandma needed absolute rest. Each time the phone didn't ring, a piece of my heart died. They knew that to break me, they would first have to leave me alone in the dark. And on a rainy Tuesday, the final blow was dealt. Thomas showed up with 2 officers and a temporary guardianship order. He claimed I had left the gas on, which was an absolute lie he forged himself by entering the house with his spare key. I was taken with only a handbag. As I was led to the car, I saw Sarah entering the house with a tape measure and "for sale" stickers. I interrupt this pain for a second to ask you something important. If you also believe that respect for parents is sacred, like this video now, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Stories like Eleanor's need to be heard so that no other mother goes through this in silence. Leave your support. It helps us keep bringing these truths to light. The place they took me in New Jersey was no resort. It was a corridor of cream walls, smelling of disinfectant and loneliness. My window didn't look out onto the Scarsdale garden, but onto a gray parking lot. There, I was just patient 402. In the first few weeks, I sat in that hard armchair waiting for Thomas to call and say it was all a misunderstanding, waiting for Julie to walk through the door crying and asking for forgiveness. But silence was the only visitor I received. The loop of tension began when I received, by an administrative mistake, a statement from the trust my children had created. My tired eyes took time to process the numbers, but the truth jumped off the pages. The Scarsdale house hadn't just been put up for sale. Sarah had sold it in record time for a value far below market to a shell company. And who owned that company? Thomas's own partner. They weren't trying to save my estate. They were laundering the money so I wouldn't be entitled to a cent of the sale if I tried to fight in court. But the most painful revelation was yet to come. On a Sunday afternoon, David came to visit me. He was always the weakest link, the one who couldn't sustain a lie for long. He smelled of alcohol and looked nervous. "Mom, you have to understand," he stammered, without looking me in the eye. "Thomas said it was the only way. The casino debts in Atlantic City, they were going to take my apartment. And Sarah, her husband's logistics company went bankrupt. We were all sinking. You have this huge house, this idle money. You've lived your life, Mom. We needed a chance." Those words were like knives. They didn't take me from my home out of care. They sold me out of desperation and greed. I was their emergency bank account. "You left me with nothing because of gambling and luxury?" I asked with a trembling voice. David just stood up and left, leaving behind the void of a betrayal that had no way back. It was that night, while the rain beat against the glass of that cold institution, that the fire inside me changed color. The sadness that had once paralyzed me transformed into an icy clarity. They thought I would die in peace here. They thought I was a helpless old lady who would forget how to fight. But they forgot who I was before I was just Mom. They forgot I managed the family grocery store for 40 years, dealing with suppliers, taxes, and crises that would make Thomas tremble. I began to observe the staff's routine. I started making friends with a young nurse named Maya, who saw in me the grandmother she had lost. Through her, I gained access to a computer. I didn't need weapons, I needed information, and I knew exactly where to look. Robert, my late husband, had an old habit. He never fully trusted banks. In the attic of our house, behind a false wall I helped build myself, there was a metal box. It didn't contain gold, but something much more valuable in court. The real records of all family transactions and a life insurance policy Robert never told the children about. The tension grew every day. I knew Sarah was cleaning out the house for the final handover to the new owner. If I didn't act fast, that secret would be demolished along with my memories. I needed to get out of there. I needed an ally. And more than anything, I needed them to keep believing I was just a defeated old woman. Life taught me that silence is the most powerful weapon of those who have nothing left to lose. While Thomas, Sarah, and David celebrated the sale of the house at expensive dinners in the city, I transformed my room in that institution into an operations center. With the help of Maya, the nurse I mentioned, I managed to contact an old acquaintance of Robert's, Mr. Henderson, a retired detective who owed his life to my late husband. "Eleanor," he told me over the phone in a raspy voice, "I knew those kids were going to be trouble, but this is a crime. They forged your signature on the sanity report." There was the first domino. Thomas, in his overconfidence, had left a paper trail that a trained eye could identify. But I didn't just want to take them to court. I wanted them to feel the weight of loss, just as I had. The escalation of tension happened on a Thursday afternoon when Sarah showed up in my room. She didn't come to see me. She came for me to sign the final donation of the jewelry that had belonged to my mother. "Mom, why keep this here? It will be safe in Thomas's safe," she said, with that plastic smile. I looked at her and, for the first time in months, smiled back. A smile that made her take a step back. "Of course, dear. Take it all. But tell Thomas I remembered the box in the attic. The one behind the brick wall. Tell the new owner not to throw it away," I said, with a purposely fragile voice. It was the perfect bait. I knew their greed would speak louder. As soon as Sarah left, she called Thomas. I knew they would rush to the Scarsdale house that night. They thought there was money hidden there. But what was in that box was proof that Thomas had been embezzling funds from his firm's clients for years, using his father's name to cover his tracks. Robert had discovered this before he died and kept the evidence to confront his son, but his heart failed before he could do so. While they headed to our old home, I executed my escape. Maya took me out through the back of the laundry. The cold New Jersey night air never felt so sweet. I was no longer patient 402. I was Eleanor Vance, and I was on my way home for the final act. The trip back to Scarsdale was a blur of lights and memories. When we reached the tree-lined street, I saw my 3 children's cars parked in front of the house. The attic lights were on. They were up there, desperate, looking for a treasure that would seal their own doom. I entered the house through the back door, the one whose lock had never been changed. The smell of my life was still there, but now mixed with the musty smell of open boxes and disorder. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step was a memory of a birthday, a Christmas, a scraped knee I had healed, and now I was going to heal the wound they had opened in my soul. When I reached the top of the attic stairs, I heard Thomas's voice, agitated. "It has to be here. David said she was lucid. If there's money here, we can pay off the partner and no one will ever find out." I stood in the shadows. Their backs were turned, struggling with the false brick wall Robert and I had built with such care. They looked like strangers. They weren't my children. They were predators fighting over scraps. That was when I stepped forward, coming out of the darkness, and said with all the clarity they thought I had lost, "It's not money you're looking for, Thomas. It's your sentence." The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah dropped the flashlight. David began to shake. Thomas turned slowly, his face as pale as a sheet. The decisive turn had arrived. They thought I would die in peace, but there I was, alive and armed with the truth. The silence in the Scarsdale attic was so heavy I could hear David's ragged breathing. They looked like pillars of salt, paralyzed by the sight of a woman they believed was properly drugged and locked away miles from there. Thomas was the first to regain his speech, but the arrogance in his voice was broken, replaced by a high-pitched tone of panic. "Mom? How did you get out of there? This is trespassing. This house doesn't belong to you anymore," he shouted, trying to use the law as a shield while holding a bundle of papers he had just ripped from behind the false wall. I took a step forward, the dim attic light accentuating every wrinkle on my face, wrinkles I earned caring for them. "This house will always have my name in its foundation, Thomas, and what you have in your hands is not money. It is proof that you robbed your own father while he was fighting cancer. It is the records of how you used our grocery store to launder money for clients that even your law firm wouldn't accept." Sarah tried to approach, her hands outstretched in a fake gesture of affection that made me nauseous. "Mom, honey, you're confused. The medication must have affected you. Let's go back to the car. We'll take care of this." "Don't touch me, Sarah." My voice came out like a whip. "I saw the photos you took of every piece of furniture in this house while I was still here. I saw you marking the price of my soul on auction tags. You didn't want to save me. You wanted to erase me so you wouldn't have to look in the mirror and see the ungrateful daughter you've become." David fell to his knees among the boxes. "She knows, Thomas. She knows everything. I told you it wouldn't work. I told you she was too smart." The atmosphere of despair took over the attic. Thomas, seeing his empire of lies crumble, took a step forward, his eyes bloodshot. "And what are you going to do, old woman? Who's going to believe you? A judge signed your guardianship. You are officially crazy. These papers mean nothing if they come from a demented woman." At that moment, the loop of tension reached its peak. I pulled a small recording device from my coat pocket, the same one Maya had helped me set up. "I don't need them to believe me, Thomas. I need them to believe you." I pressed play. Thomas's voice, clear and cruel, echoed in the attic. "If there's money here, we can pay off the partner and no one finds out." Thomas said it was the only way. "You've lived your life, Mom. We needed a chance." With every word that came from the recorder, their faces transformed. Their greed had been recorded. The confession that the guardianship was a fraud to pay gambling debts and corporate bankruptcies was there, captured forever. Their plan to sell me as crazy had just been destroyed by their own arrogance. "You thought I would die in peace," I said, walking toward the stairs. "You thought I would accept the role of the victim, but a mother knows her children. I knew your greed would be greater than your caution. I left a trail of crumbs, and you came running like the wolves you are." Downstairs, blue and red lights began to reflect in the windows. Mr. Henderson hadn't come alone. He brought the police and a district prosecutor Thomas knew very well, one who would not accept bribes. The emotional climax was there. My children, the people I would have given my life for, were being surrounded not by enemies, but by the consequences of their own actions. I didn't feel joy. I felt a bitter liberation. The Scarsdale house was empty of furniture, but now it was free of lies. "What did you do, Mom?" Julie cried, appearing at the attic door, finally realizing the house of cards had fallen. I did what I should have done a long time ago, Julie, I replied without looking back. I stopped being convenient, and I started being just. Eleanor Vance is no longer a victim. She is the symbol of justice for all mothers who have been forgotten. The sunlight coming through my window today is not the same gray light of Scarsdale. I am sitting on a porch in Florida, facing the sea, where the sound of the waves does the work my children's silence never could, giving me peace. But the road here wasn't made of petals. It was made of courage and the dust from the ruins of my old life. That night in the attic, when the police came up the stairs, I saw my children's world collapse in real time. Thomas tried to use his lawyer's badge, tried to intimidate the officers, but the evidence in the metal box and the recording in my hands were the final verdict. Fraud against an elderly person is a serious federal crime in the United States, and when it involves manipulation of legal documents and money laundering, the system does not forgive, not even the son of a Vance. Thomas lost his license to practice law and faced a lawsuit that consumed every cent of what he thought he had stolen from me. Sarah, the broker who saw our house as a commission, saw her reputation destroyed in New York high society. No one wanted to do business with someone who evicted her own mother into the snow. David and Julie, they had to learn the hard way that money coming from betrayal burns the hands of those who hold it. And as for me, many people ask if I forgave them. Forgiveness is a beautiful word people use to feel comfortable. I chose justice. Forgiveness without repentance is just an invitation to be stepped on again. I don't hate them. Hate is a burden too heavy for a woman my age to carry. I simply accepted that the children I raised no longer exist. In their place, strangers driven by greed were born. The Scarsdale house was legally recovered. I sold it, yes, but this time by my own hands and for a fair price. With the money, I didn't just buy this beach house. I founded an organization called Eleanor's Legacy, which helps other women over 60 understand their legal rights and protect themselves from financial abuse by family members. I turned my pain into a shield for other mothers. You know, sometimes I close my eyes and still hear the sound of them running down the hallway of that old house. I smell the Thanksgiving turkey and see Robert laughing at the head of the table. These memories belong to me. They tried to take my furniture, my roof, and my name, but they couldn't take my dignity. My own children left me with nothing, or so they thought. But they forgot that nothing is exactly what I had when I started the grocery store with their father 50 years ago. And if you know how to build from scratch once, you know how to do it again, no matter your age. They thought I would die in peace, hidden in a nursing home room. But I chose to live at war for my truth so that I could finally rest in peace with my conscience. A mother doesn't stop being a mother when she grows old. She just stops being convenient. And when she stops being convenient, she becomes dangerous to those who live on lies. To you, who listened to my story this far, I leave a warning. Do not mistake a mother's gentleness for weakness. And to you, who perhaps feel invisible in your own family, remember Eleanor Vance. Your story doesn't end when others decide. It ends when you decide to lower the curtain. Justice may be slow and winter may be harsh, but spring always arrives for those who have the courage to unearth the truth. My children thought they had inherited my past. Little did they know I was just beginning to write my future. If this story touched your heart, or if you know someone who has gone through something similar, don't leave without leaving a like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories of overcoming. Comment justice below along with your city. Your interaction is the voice that prevents these stories from remaining in silence.